6 months had passed since the special council meeting about human combat sports. Jake Morrison could hardly believe how much had changed. He was now walking through the halls of the new Interspecies Athletic Center on Nexus Prime, the council station that had become the headquarters for something no one had expected. The center was buzzing with activity. Through one window, Jake could see a group of crystalline collective members practicing what they called harmonic combat. They would face each other and create competing sound waves, trying to outsing their opponent while maintaining perfect musical harmony. It was beautiful to watch and listen to. In another room, members of the aquatic collective were practicing pressure fighting. They would create strong water currents and try to swim through their opponent's current while maintaining their own. It required incredible strength and concentration. Jake smiled as he remembered how all this had started. After the demonstration 6 months ago, the council had voted to create a new position, Director of Interspecies Athletic Exchange. To Jake's surprise, they had offered the job to him. Ambassador Morrison, a voice called. Jake turned to see Dr. Zorthik floating toward him. The jellyfish-like being seemed excited, which was unusual for his normally calm species. "Please, just call me Jake," he said. "What's got you so excited today?" "The Velkari hive has just finished developing their version of combat sports," Dr. Zorthik said. "They call it coordination combat. 2 hive minds compete to see who can coordinate their individual members more effectively while the other tries to disrupt their patterns." Jake was fascinated. "How does it work?" "Come, I'll show you, Doctor," Zorthik said, leading Jake to another part of the center. In a large room, Jake saw something amazing. 2 groups of Velkari were arranged in complex patterns. Each group had about 20 individuals, and they were moving together like a single organism. But as one group tried to form specific shapes, the other group would create movements and sounds designed to break their concentration. "The goal is to maintain perfect coordination while your opponents try to disrupt you," Dr. Zorthik explained. "It requires incredible mental discipline and teamwork." Jake watched as one hive mind successfully completed a complex pattern while the other failed to break their focus. When the competition ended, both groups came together and shared their experiences, discussing what they had learned. "It's remarkable," Jake said. "They've taken the core idea of combat sports, testing yourself against an opponent who is trying their best to defeat you, and adapted it perfectly to their species nature." "Yes," Dr. Zorthik agreed. "And look at how it has affected them. The Velkari report that their coordination abilities have improved significantly. They're also learning to work better under pressure." As they walked through the center, Jake saw more examples of how different species had adapted the combat sports concept. The gas dwellers had developed cloud fighting, where they would try to maintain their shape while opponents tried to disperse them with wind currents. The rock eaters had created geological combat, where they would slowly reshape terrain while their opponents tried to counter their changes. A single match could last for days, but the rock eaters loved the deep, slow thinking it required. "Jake," a familiar voice called. He turned to see Maria Santos walking toward him. The retired boxer was now working as an instructor at the center, helping other species understand the principles behind combat sports. "Maria, how are the lessons going?" Jake asked. "Incredibly well," she said with a big smile. "Today I'm working with a group of Zephyrians who want to develop aerial combat sports. They're thinking of creating flying competitions where opponents try to outmaneuver each other through obstacle courses." "That sounds amazing," Jake said. "Any challenges?" "The usual one," Maria laughed. "Every species thinks their version has to be exactly like human combat sports at first. I have to keep explaining that the important thing is the principle, not the specific techniques." Dr. Zorthik nodded. "What principle is that?" "Testing yourself against someone else who is trying their best to test you, Maria said. Growing. Stronger through challenge. Learning to win and lose with respect and dignity. They continued walking and came to Jake's office. Inside, he found Amy Lee working at a computer. The martial arts master had become his assistant director, helping coordinate between all the different species. Amy, what's the status on the big event? Jake asked. Amy looked up from her screen. The first interspecies combat sports exhibition is scheduled for next month. We have confirmed participants from 32 species so far. Jake sat down at his desk. A year ago, he never could have imagined that he would be organizing a galaxy-wide sporting event. But here he was, and he loved every minute of it. Any word from Earth about their team? Amy asked. Chris Johnson is confirmed for wrestling, Jake said. Kevin Price will demonstrate mixed martial arts. And we have a special surprise, a group of children from different countries who will show traditional games that involve friendly competition. Children? Dr. Zorthik asked with interest. It was Amy's idea, Jake said. She thought it would be important to show that human combat starts very young, but in the form of play and games. Tag, dodgeball, even playground wrestling. It's all about learning to compete while having fun. Amy smiled. Many species are bringing their young ones to participate. The Crystalline Collective has young singers who will demonstrate harmonic play. The Hive Builders have young ones who compete in building games. Maria joined them in the office. I've been thinking, she said. A year ago, the council was worried that humans were too violent. Now look what's happened. Jake looked out his office window. He could see members of different species practicing together, learning from each other, and developing new forms of competition that none of them could have imagined alone. You know what I think is most remarkable? Jake said. Every species that has developed these new sports reports the same benefits. Better physical fitness, mental discipline, ability to handle stress, and stronger social bonds. It's almost like competition and challenge are universal needs, Amy said. Every species needs ways to test themselves and grow stronger. Dr. Zorthik floated thoughtfully. Perhaps this is why the council found human combat sports so puzzling at first. Not because they were strange, but because they represented something that other species needed, but hadn't discovered yet. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Jake checked his screen and saw it was from President Mordak. Jake, the message. Read, the council has voted unanimously to make the interspecies athletic exchange a permanent part of galactic society. We are also creating a new treaty called the Combat Sports Accords, establishing rules and principles for interspecies competition. Congratulations on bringing the galaxy together in a way no one expected. Jake showed the message to the others. Maria laughed with joy. Amy clapped her hands. Dr. Zorthik made a happy humming sound. So what started as a question about why humans are different has become something that brings everyone together, Jake said. That's the best part, Amy said. We didn't change to fit in with everyone else. We stayed true to who we are, and somehow that helped everyone else discover new parts of themselves. Through the window, Jake could see a group of young beings from different species playing together. Human children were teaching crystalline young ones how to play tag, while the crystal beings were showing the humans how to make beautiful sounds together. You know, Maria said, I think this is what combat sports were always really about. Not fighting, but bringing out the best in each other. Making each other stronger through challenge and competition. Jake nodded. And now we're doing it on a galactic scale. A year ago, the Galactic Council had asked why Earth was the only planet with so many combat sports. The answer, Jake now realized, was simple. Earth wasn't meant to be the only planet with combat sports. It was meant to be the first dot as the sun set over Nexus Prime, or what counted as sunset in space. Jake watched dozens of species practicing their new forms of competition. They were all different, adapted to each species' unique nature and abilities. But they all shared the same core principles that human combat sports had taught the galaxy: respect, discipline, growth through challenge, and the joy of testing yourself against others who wanted to help you become your best. The question had been answered, but more importantly, it had opened the door to something wonderful that no one had expected. The galaxy had learned that differences weren't something to worry about. They were something to celebrate and share. And in a strange way, by staying true to their nature as fighters and competitors, humans had helped bring peace and understanding to the galaxy. Not by conquering or dominating, but by teaching everyone how to grow stronger together. Jake smiled as he turned off his office lights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new species wanting to develop their own combat sports, and new ways for the galaxy to learn and grow together. That it was, he thought, exactly what human combat sports had always been about. The day of the special Galactic Council meeting had arrived. Jake Morrison stood in the main council chamber, but today it looked very different. The usual round table had been moved to one side. In the center of the room was a large mat, and around it were cameras and holographic projectors that would let all the council members see clearly. Jake was nervous. He had never tried to organize something like this before. For the past week, he and his team had worked to bring together the perfect group of people to demonstrate human combat sports to the galaxy. President Mordek called the session to order. Today, we will hear Ambassador Morrison's explanation of human combat sports. The Council is very interested in understanding this unique aspect of human culture. Jake looked around the room. The alien representatives seemed curious, but also cautious. He could tell that some of them were still worried about human violence. "Thank you, President Mordok," Jake said. "Today I want to show you what human combat sports really are. But first, let me introduce the people who will help me explain." The first person to step forward was Chris Johnson, an Olympic wrestler from the United States. He was a big man with broad shoulders, but his face was kind and calm. "Chris will demonstrate wrestling," Jake said. "Wrestling is one of the oldest human sports. It appears in the art and stories of almost every human culture." Next came Amy Lee, a martial arts master from Korea. She was small and moved with perfect balance. Her black belt had gold writing on it that showed her high rank. "Amy will show us martial arts, specifically karate," Jake said. Martial arts combine physical techniques with mental discipline and philosophy. The third person was Kevin Price, a former Navy SEAL who now taught mixed martial arts. He was tall and muscular, but spoke with a gentle voice. Kevin will explain mixed martial arts, which combines techniques from many different fighting styles. Jake said. Finally, Maria Santos stepped forward. She was a retired professional boxer from Brazil. Her hands showed the scars of many fights, but her smile was warm and friendly. "Maria will demonstrate boxing and explain what it means to be a fighter," Jake said. The council members leaned forward with interest. Jake could see that they were surprised by how normal and peaceful these fighters seemed. "Before we begin," Jake said, "I want you to understand something important. In human culture, our greatest fighters are known for their control, not their violence. They are respected for their discipline, their respect for opponents, and their ability to stay calm under pressure." Counselor Vextara's crystal body glowed with curiosity. "Please proceed with your demonstration." Chris Johnson and another wrestler stepped onto the mat. Jake explained that they would demonstrate a wrestling match with all the proper rules and safety measures. "Watch how they begin," Jake said. The two wrestlers shook hands and looked each other in the eyes with respect. Then they began to grapple, each trying to take the other down to the mat. The alien representatives watched in fascination. The wrestlers moved with skill and strength, but also with obvious control. When one wrestler was taken down, he tapped the mat to signal that he was giving up. Immediately, his opponent stopped and helped him to his feet. "Did you see that?" Jake asked. The moment one wrestler signaled defeat, the other stopped attacking and helped him up. This is the true spirit of human combat sports. Dr. Zorthik. From the academic assembly floated forward. Fascinating. The physical contact appeared intense, but there was no attempt to cause lasting harm. Amy Lee stepped onto the mat next. She began to perform a kata, which was a sequence of martial arts movements practiced alone. Her movements were beautiful and precise, like a deadly dance. "This is called a kata," Jake explained. "It's a moving meditation that martial artists use to practice techniques and develop mental focus. Notice how every movement has purpose and control." Amy's performance was mesmerizing. She moved through blocks, strikes, and kicks with perfect form. But it was clear that every movement was designed not just for fighting, but for artistic expression and personal development. When she finished, Amy bowed to the council. "In martial arts, we say that the ultimate goal is not to defeat others, but to defeat the negative parts of yourself: fear, anger, and lack of discipline." Commander Silktar's metal body whirred with interest. "So these combat forms serve a philosophical purpose as well as a physical one?" "Yes," Amy said. "A true martial artist learns to be peaceful through understanding violence. We learn when to fight, and more importantly, when not to fight." Kevin Price stepped forward next. "I'd like to explain mixed martial arts by showing you something that might seem strange to you. I'm going to demonstrate techniques that could be very dangerous, but in a completely safe way." He and another fighter put on protective gear and entered a cage-like structure. Jake explained that mixed martial arts combine wrestling, boxing, martial arts, and ground fighting. The two men began to fight using various techniques. They punched, kicked, wrestled, and fought on the ground. But throughout the match, a referee watched carefully, and both fighters followed strict rules. When one fighter got his opponent in a hold that could have caused injury, the opponent tapped out immediately. The fight stopped instantly, and both fighters embraced. "This is what makes human combat sports unique," Kevin said, breathing hard. "We simulate real combat, but with complete safety and control. We test our skills, our courage, and our ability to think under pressure." Elder Grum from the Rock-Eater civilization spoke slowly. "The ... simulation of danger ... without ... actual danger. This is ... sophisticated." Finally, Maria Santos stepped forward. "I want to tell you about boxing," she said. "I fought professionally. For 15 years, I won many fights and lost some too. But the most important thing I learned was not how to hurt people. I learned how to overcome fear." She put on boxing gloves and began hitting a heavy bag. Her punches were fast and powerful, but her movements were also graceful and controlled. "Every boxer learns that the real fight is not with your opponent," Maria said between punches. "The real fight is with yourself, with your fear, your doubt, your desire to quit when things get hard." She stopped hitting the bag and faced the council. "When I fought other boxers, we were not enemies. We were helping each other become stronger. After every fight, we would hug and thank each other." Yip Tel from the Aquatic Collective spoke through her water tube. "This is difficult for us to understand. Your species finds growth through conflict with others?" Maria smiled. "Not conflict. Challenge. We challenge each other to be better. In a boxing match, both fighters are trying their best to win. This forces both of them to perform at their highest level. We bring out the best in each other." Jake stepped forward. "This is what human combat sports really are. They're not about violence or aggression. They're about testing yourself against another person who is also trying their best. They teach U.S. discipline, respect, courage, and how to handle both victory and defeat with dignity. Dr. Lisa Park, who had been watching from the side, stepped forward. The evolutionary research shows that humans develop these activities because our home planet required us to be adaptable, tough, and able to work well under pressure. Combat sports let us practice these survival skills in a safe, controlled environment. Professor Ben Carter appeared on the large screen via video link. Throughout human history, our greatest fighters have been known not for their ability to hurt others, but for their character, their discipline, and their sportsmanship. The council chamber was quiet for a moment. Jake could see the representatives thinking about what they had seen. Finally, President Murdoch spoke. This has been very enlightening. We see that human combat sports are much more complex than we initially understood. They appear to be sophisticated cultural practices that serve multiple purposes. Counselor Vexthara's crystal body turned warm golden color. We now understand that these activities are not expressions of aggression, but rather methods of personal development and cultural bonding. Jake felt relief wash over him, but then Commander Silktar spoke up. This is all very interesting, the metal being said, but we are curious about something else. If combat sports help humans develop these positive qualities, might other species benefit from developing similar activities adapted to our own natures? Jake blinked in surprise. He hadn't expected this question, but as he looked around the room, he could see interest in the faces and energy patterns of many council members. That's an interesting idea, Jake said. I suppose it would be possible to adapt the principles of combat sports to different species and their abilities. The chamber began to buzz with excited conversation in dozens of different languages and communication methods. Jake realized that something unexpected was happening. Instead of being concerned about human combat sports, the council was becoming interested in developing their own versions. 1 week had passed since Jake met with Dr. Lisa Park and Professor Ben Carter. They had been working hard to find answers, but Jake was getting worried. The council meeting was only 7 days away, and they still didn't have a clear explanation for why humans were the only species with combat sports. Jake was in his apartment in Geneva when his phone rang. It was Lisa. Jake, I think we need more help, she said. Ben and I have found some interesting things, but we're missing something important. I want you to meet Colonel Steve Adams. Who is he? Jake asked. He's a military historian at the Global Defense Institute. He specializes in how warfare and combat evolved throughout human history. I think he might have the piece we're missing. An hour later, Jake was sitting in a conference room with Lisa, Ben on video call from London, and Colonel Steve Adams. Steve was a tall man with short gray hair and the straight posture of someone who had spent years in the military. Dr. Park explained your situation, Steve said. This is actually a question I've thought about a lot. Why do humans love combat sports when other intelligent species don't? What's your theory? Jake asked. Steve pulled out a tablet and showed them a map of Earth. It starts with where we came from. Earth is unusual compared to most planets that developed intelligent life. He touched the screen, and the map changed to show Earth during the Ice Age. Look at this. For most of human evolution, our planet was a very dangerous place. Ice ages came and went. Volcanoes erupted. Continents moved. The climate changed constantly. Lisa nodded. I've been researching this too. Most other galactic species evolved on much more stable worlds. Exactly, Steve said. The crystalline collective evolved in underground caves with steady temperatures and plenty of minerals. The gas dwellers live in the atmospheres of gas giants where conditions barely change for millions of years. Ben's voice came from the video. Call I've been looking at their cultural records. None of them had to deal with the kind of environmental challenges that humans faced. Steve changed the image on his tablet. Now it showed early humans hunting. But Earth's challenges didn't just make life hard for humans. They made us into something unique. We became persistence hunters. What does that mean? Jake asked. It means we hunted by chasing our prey until they got tired, Steve explained. We couldn't run as fast as antelopes or hit as hard as lions. But we could run for hours and hours without stopping. We could track animals across great distances. We could work together as a team while still being individually strong. Lisa leaned forward. And this required specific mental and physical abilities. Right, Steve said. Humans had to be able to make quick decisions under pressure. We had to read body language and predict what our prey would do next. We had to stay calm when we were tired, hungry, and facing dangerous animals. Ben's voice came through the speakers. This is starting to make sense. These are exactly the skills that combat sports develop. Steve nodded. But there's more. Humans didn't just hunt. We also had to compete with other predators. Saber-tooth. Cats wanted the same prey we did. So did cave bears, wolves, and other dangerous animals. He showed them another image. This one showed early humans facing a large predator. Sometimes we had to fight these predators. Not because we wanted to, but because we had to survive. And sometimes we had to fight other groups of humans for resources like water, food, or safe places to live. Jake was beginning to understand. So humans evolved to be good at fighting. Not just good at it, Steve said. We evolved to see fighting as a normal part of life. But here's the important part. We also evolved the ability to control our fighting instincts. Lisa looked confused. What do you mean? Steve stood up and walked to a whiteboard. He drew two stick figures facing each other. When animals fight, they usually fight to the death or until one runs away. But humans developed something different. We learned to fight with rules. He drew a circle around the stick figures. Early humans had tribal combat rituals. Young men would fight each other to prove they were ready to be warriors, but they had rules to prevent serious injury. They fought until someone was clearly the winner, then they stopped. This is fascinating, Ben said from the screen. So combat sports developed from survival training. Exactly, Steve said. But not just physical survival. Social survival, too. In early human tribes, you needed to prove you were strong enough to protect the group. But you also needed to prove you could control yourself and follow rules. Lisa was taking notes quickly. So combat sports became a way to test both physical and mental qualities. Yes, Steve said. Think about what a boxer learns. Physical fitness, yes. But also discipline, respect for opponents, ability to stay calm under pressure, strategic thinking, and how to lose with dignity. Jake felt excitement. Growing. These aren't skills that other species needed to develop. Right again, Steve said. The Zephyrians evolved from flying creatures. Their survival strategy was to fly away from danger, not fight it. The aquatic collective evolved in vast oceans where there was always somewhere else to swim if there was trouble. Ben's voice came through the speakers again. The hive builders survive by working together perfectly. They never needed to develop individual combat skills because they always act as a group. Lisa looked up from her notes. So combat sports aren't about violence at all. They're about practicing the skills that kept humans alive on a dangerous planet, but in a safe, controlled way, Steve added. Modern combat sports have rules, referees, safety equipment, and medical staff. They've taken the survival skills our ancestors needed and turned them into art. Jake's phone buzzed. Another message from the Galactic Council. This one was from Counselor Vaxthara. It said, several species are now concerned that humans may be naturally aggressive. Some suggest limiting human involvement in peacekeeping missions. Please address this at next meeting. Jake showed the message to the others. Steve frowned. This is exactly what we were afraid of, Lisa said. They think combat sports mean humans are violent. But we've just proven the opposite, Steve said. Combat sports show that humans are so good at controlling violence that we turned it into art and entertainment. Ben's voice came from the screen. We need to show them this. We need to demonstrate what combat sports really teach. Jake nodded. But how? How do we explain this to beings who never needed to develop these skills? Lisa stood up and walked to the window. We show them. We don't just explain combat sports. We demonstrate them. We show the council what they really are. You mean bring fighters to the council station? Jake asked. Why not? Steve said. Let them see a boxing match or a martial arts demonstration. Let them see the respect between opponents, the rules, the control. Ben's voice was excited. I know some perfect people for this. Athletes who understand the deeper meaning of their sports. People who can explain not just how to fight, but why we fight. Jake felt hope for the first time in days. You think this could work? I think it's our best chance, Lisa said. The council wants to understand humans. Let's show them who we really are. Steve gathered his papers. I'll help you prepare. We need to choose the right demonstrations and the right people to explain them. And I'll prepare the historical and cultural background. Ben said from the screen. Lisa smiled. This is going to be interesting. I don't think any species has ever given a combat sports demonstration to the Galactic Council before. Jake laughed for the first time in a week. Well, humans are good at doing things that have never been done before. As they planned their presentation, Jake felt confident that they had found the answer. Combat sports weren't about violence. They were about human resilience, adaptability, and the ability to turn challenge into growth. Now they just had to convince 46 alien species that this was true. Jake Morrison's ship landed at the spaceport in Geneva 3 days later. The flight from the council station had given him time to think, but he still did not have answers. The question kept going around in his head. Why were humans the only species with combat sports? He took a taxi to the Global Cultural Institute. The building was tall and made of glass, sitting next to Lake Geneva. Inside, scientists from all over Earth studied how humans compared to other species in the galaxy. Dr. Lisa Park was waiting for him in her office. She was a xenanthropologist, which meant she studied how different species lived and behaved. Her office was full of books, pictures of alien worlds, and models of various galactic species. Jake, good to see you, she said, shaking his hand. I got your message about the council meeting. This is a fascinating question. Fascinating maybe, but also worrying, Jake said, sitting down in a chair across from her desk. Some of the council members seemed concerned that humans might be too violent for certain responsibilities in the galaxy. Lisa frowned. That would be unfortunate. Combat sports are actually very controlled activities. They have rules, safety measures, and strong traditions of respect. That's what I tried to tell them, but I don't think I explained it well. I need help understanding why we have these sports when no other species does. Lisa picked up her phone. I know just the person to help us. Professor Ben Carter is the best combat sports historian in the world. He's at the University of London, but he can join us by video call. A few minutes later, Ben Carter's face appeared on the large screen in Lisa's office. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. Behind him, Jake could see shelves full of books and old photographs of boxers and wrestlers. Dr. Park told me about your situation, Ben said. This is actually something I've thought about since we made contact with other species. Human combat sports are truly unique. But why? Jake asked. What makes us different? Ben leaned forward. Let me ask you something first. When you think of combat sports, what comes to mind? Boxing, wrestling, martial arts, fencing, Jake said. Mixed martial arts, judo, karate. There are so many. Exactly, Ben said. And they exist in every human culture. Ancient Egypt had wrestling. Greece had pankration, which was like modern mixed martial arts. China developed kung fu. Japan created judo and karate. Europe had sword fighting and boxing. Every continent, every culture, all developing fighting sports independently. Lisa was taking notes. That is remarkable when you think about it. Most human activities spread from one culture to another. But combat sports seem to have developed everywhere humans lived. What about other species? Jake asked. Surely some of them must fight for fun or sport. Ben shook his head. I've been studying the cultural reports from all 47 council species. They have competitive activities, yes, but nothing like human combat sports. The Zephyrians race through the air, but they never try to knock each other down or block each other's path. The Aquatic Collective has swimming competitions, but they swim in separate lanes and never interfere with each other. The Crystalline Collective has singing contests, Lisa added, but they take turns. They don't try to sing louder than each other or interrupt each other's songs. Jake was starting to see the pattern. So other species compete, but they don't directly oppose each other. That's right, Ben said. Human combat sports are unique because they involve two people actively trying to defeat each other within a set of rules. Boxing, wrestling, martial arts, they're all about overcoming an opponent who is trying to overcome you. Lisa pulled up some files on her computer. I've been looking at the psychological studies we have of other species. Most of them evolved in environments where cooperation was more important than competition. She showed Jake pictures on her screen. The Crystalline Collective evolved in deep caves with plenty of resources. They never had to compete with each other for food or space. The gas dwellers live in the atmospheres of gas giant planets. There's unlimited space, and they feed on the chemical energy in the clouds. The Aquatic Collective evolved in vast oceans. Ben added from the screen. Plenty of room, plenty of food. The hive builders work together to create their structures. Even their competitions are about building better things, not defeating each other. Jake was beginning to understand. But humans are different. Very different, Lisa said. Earth is a much more challenging world than most planets that produced intelligent life. We had ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and competition with other predators. Humans evolved as hunters, Ben explained. Not just any hunters, but persistence hunters. We chased our prey for miles and miles until they got tired. This required incredible physical and mental toughness. Lisa nodded. And we competed with other predators for the same prey. Saber-toothed cats, cave bears, wolves. Humans had to be smart, tough, and adaptable to survive. Jake thought about this. So combat sports developed from our hunting and survival instincts? Partly, Ben said. But there's more to it. Combat sports aren't just about fighting. They're about testing yourself against another person who is trying their best to defeat you. It's about learning from failure, getting back up when you're knocked down, and becoming stronger through challenge. Think about a boxing match, Lisa said. The boxers shake hands before and after the fight. They follow strict rules. There's a referee to make sure everyone is safe. The goal isn't to hurt your opponent. It's to prove your skill, courage, and heart. Jake's phone buzzed. He looked at it and saw a message from President Mordock at the Galactic Council. It said, several species have expressed concerns about humanity's combat obsession. Some question whether humans should be given certain galactic responsibilities. Please prepare a thorough explanation. Jake showed the message to Lisa, and Ben. Lisa looked worried. "This is more serious than I thought," she said. "If the Council thinks humans are too violent, it could affect Earth's position in the galactic community." Ben frowned on the screen. "We need to show them that combat sports are not about violence. They're about discipline, respect, and personal growth. They're some of the most civilized activities humans have created. How do we prove that?" Jake asked. Lisa stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the sun was setting over Lake Geneva. "We need to do more research. We need to understand exactly why humans developed these sports and why other species didn't. And we need to find a way to explain it that the Council can understand." "I can help with the historical research," Ben said. "I'll dig into the origins of combat sports in every human culture. And I'll look at the evolutionary and psychological aspects," Lisa said. "There has to be something in human development that made us different." Jake felt a little better. At least he had help now. But he also felt the pressure. If they couldn't explain this properly, humanity's future in the galactic community might be at risk. "We have less than 2 weeks," he said. "The Council is expecting answers at the next meeting." Lisa and Ben both nodded. They understood how important this was. "We'll find the answer," Lisa said. "And when we do, I think the Council might be surprised by what they learn about humanity." As Jake left the Institute that evening, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, representatives of 47 species were wondering if humans were too dangerous to be trusted with important galactic responsibilities. He hoped Lisa was right. He hoped the truth about combat sports would surprise them in a good way. Jake Morrison sat in his chair at the big round table. The table was made of some kind of blue metal that glowed softly. Around him sat creatures from 47 different worlds. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of crystal that sang when they talked. A few were just floating clouds of gas that somehow had voices. Jake was the only human in the room. He represented Earth in the Galactic Council. The Council met once every month to talk about trade, peace, and sharing knowledge between the worlds. Today felt different, though. The usual business was done. They had talked about new trade routes and solved a small dispute between 2 mining worlds. Now they were in the cultural exchange part of the meeting. This was when different species shared interesting things about their home worlds. Counselor Vexthara was speaking. She was one of the crystal beings from the Crystalline Collective. When she talked, her whole body made musical sounds. It was beautiful, but sometimes hard to understand. "Every species here has fun activities," she said. Her crystal body turned a bright blue as she spoke. "We have games and sports and competitions. The Zephyrians have their flying races. The Aquatic Collective has swimming contests. My people have singing competitions where we make the most beautiful sounds." Jake nodded. He had seen some of these activities. The Zephyrian flying races were amazing to watch. The bird-like creatures could fly faster than any Earth aircraft. Their races went through dangerous storm clouds and around floating mountains. Vexthara continued. "The gas dwellers have cloud-shaping contests. The hive builders compete to see who can build the most complex structures. But there is something very strange about humans." The room got quiet. Jake felt 46 pairs of eyes, sensors, and other detection organs turned toward him. Even the usually sleepy rock-eaters from the heavy-gravity world seemed to pay attention. "Humans are the only species that has fighting sports," Vexthara said. "Not just 1 or 2. You have dozens of them. Boxing, wrestling, something called martial arts, sword fighting, and many others. You make entertainment out of physical combat between individuals. Why do you do this?" Jake felt his face get hot. He had never thought about this question before. He tried to think of an answer, but nothing came to mind. Around the table, other counselors started to murmur, and make their various sounds of interest. The Velkari hive mind spoke through their representative, a tall insect-like creature with 6 arms. "This is indeed puzzling," the Velkari said. "In our records of 47 species, only humans have developed organized fighting as entertainment. Other species may fight for food or mates, but never as sport." Dr. Zorthek from the Academic Assembly of Proxima floated forward. His species looked like large jellyfish with brains visible through clear skin. "Our xenobiologists have studied this for many years. Human combat sports appear in every human culture throughout your history, from ancient times to now. It seems to be a fundamental part of being human." Jake's mouth felt dry. This was not going well. "Well," he started, "combat sports are about more than fighting. They teach discipline and respect, and—" "But why fighting at all?" interrupted Counselor Yiptel from the Aquatic Collective. She was speaking through a water-filled tube that let her breathe while in the air-filled council chamber. "My people compete in deep current swimming. It tests our strength and skill. But we do not try to hurt each other while doing it." More voices joined in. The representatives were not angry, but they were very curious. Some seemed worried. Elder Grum from the Rock-Eater civilization spoke slowly, as his people always did. "Fighting ... is usually ... for survival. Or resources. Why? Do humans ... make it ... fun?" Jake looked around the room. These beings had welcomed humanity into the galactic community just 5 years ago. Earth was still new to all this. Humans were trying hard to prove they belonged among the stars with these ancient and wise species. But now it seemed like humanity's love of combat sports made them look primitive or violent. Jake could see worry in the faces and energy patterns. Of the other counselors, Commander Sultar from the Silicon Valley world spoke next. His people were made of metal and circuits. "We have been observing human broadcasts for research purposes. Your species watches these fighting contests for entertainment. Large crowds gather. People cheer when one fighter defeats another. This behavior pattern is ... unique." Jake felt sweat on his forehead. "It's not about violence," he said. "These sports have rules. There are referees, safety equipment. Athletes show respect to each other. But the goal is still to defeat an opponent through physical force," said Vexthara. "This is what confuses us. No other species has developed this pattern." The room was quiet again. Jake could hear the soft humming of the station's life support systems. Outside the big windows, he could see stars and the colorful gas clouds of the nebula region where the council station was located. President Mordak of the council spoke up. She was from the first species, the oldest known intelligent race in the galaxy. Her people looked like tall, thin humans, but with silver skin and large black eyes. "Ambassador Morrison," she said in her calm voice, "this question has come up many times in our xenocultural studies. We do not ask this to judge humanity. We ask because we want to understand. Understanding leads to better cooperation between our peoples." Jake nodded. He understood that this was important, but he also realized he did not have a good answer. How could he explain something that seemed so natural to humans, but was completely alien to everyone else in the galaxy? "I would like to request a recess," Jake said. "I need to consult with experts on Earth about this question. It deserves a proper answer." President Mordak nodded. "That is wise. We will continue this discussion in 2 weeks. This question interests many of our member species." As the council meeting ended and the various representatives began to leave, Jake felt a weight on his shoulders. He had to find out why humans were the only species in the galaxy that turned fighting into sport. Answer might be more important than he realized.